The science and the evidence is in. The experts recommended the Tech Frontier mine for approval in the national public interest in July. What is happening now is a political decision. Liberal politicians lobbying Liberal ministers to tank this project because they want to shut Alberta down and because they're against energy development fundamentally.
The federal cabinet has a big decision to make by the end of this month, whether to approve the $20 billion Tech Frontier oil sands mining project. But while it mulls over that decision, it's facing some pressure from inside its own party. Some Liberal MPs are voicing concerns about the mine's possible environmental impact. The project is expected to create 7,000 construction jobs as well as 2,500 operational ones. A federal provincial panel concluded last summer that the project was in the public interest despite adverse environmental effects. Julie Dabrusin is the Liberal MP for Toronto Danforth. She joins us from Toronto. Our studio's there. Hi, Ms. Dabrusin. Nice to see you. Thanks for your time.
Hi, how are you doing?
So I wanted to start off by asking you, for obviously following the piece in HuffPost, we're reaching out to various MPs on their position on the mine. Can you articulate what your position is?
So I actually reviewed the review panel report, and I have a lot of concerns about the tech mine going forward.
And what are those concerns?
When you look at what the report said, from my reading, it talks about massive environmental damage that can't be mitigated. We look at the carbon emissions that would be coming from it. It doesn't seem to fit with transitioning to a low carbon economy and meeting net zero by 2050.
So I read the report as well, and they do highlight two things that I'm guessing that you're referring to. The first is that there are, I think it's 4 million tons of carbon emissions a year. It says that that would be, it may make it more difficult to meet the targets that were set out at the time that the report was concluded. At the same time, it also goes through the economic benefits. And at the end of the day, it says, although we find that there will be significant adverse project and cumulative effects on certain environmental components and Indigenous communities under our authority, we consider these effects to be justified. And the Frontier project is in the public interest.
And that's correct. It also, though, went through things like damage to old-growth forests.
It does, yes.
And biodiversity impacts and the bison herds in the area. So it refers to a lot of different environmental impacts as well.
It does. And I guess my question to you is, if the regulator took into account all of that stuff and still deemed it to be in the public interest, why is that not good enough?
Well, when I reviewed the report, it seemed to make the assumption that the interest was based on a $95 barrel price for oil. And yet, even just recently, the tech CEO talked about the fact that this mine wouldn't be able to go ahead if there wasn't an increase in price for the oil barrel price, because that's not what it's selling at right now. So if the concern is creating jobs, and people in my community care deeply about making sure that people are getting jobs right across this country, but if it's truly about making sure that there are jobs across this country, then it would make sense in the public interest to have projects that are actually going to be going ahead and are shovel ready.
So do you need some sort of assurance from, for example, the company that they do intend on building this? And I take your point that the CEO came out a few weeks ago and said, here are the conditions that we need in order to proceed. And those conditions don't wholly exist right now. But if they were to say, okay, under these conditions, yes, this project would go ahead and in fact would create the thousands of jobs across this timeline, would that be enough to satisfy you? Or do you fundamentally believe that the environmental effects are too great?
Well, two things. I mean, it's a bit hypothetical as to whether they would ever be able to say that, and clearly that's not what they're saying right now. Beyond that point, though, I'm really concerned when I read a report that talks about these types of environmental damages that can't be mitigated. When I see those carbon emissions, and I know that our goal is to get to net zero by 2050, something that people in my community raise all the time is that they want to make sure that we meet those targets. And so in good faith, when I look at this, I don't see how that fits in.
Tech says that as a company, it's going to pledge to aim to achieve that net zero emission as a company, emissions by 2050. What I have been hearing is that there is some potential condition that could be attached to an approval that would ensure Alberta legislates the same thing for its province. Is that kind of something that you're open to? If the approval comes with conditions like that, does that mitigate some of the concerns that you have?
And I'm not sure that they've actually presented the case for how they would get there. So it seems
To be fair, neither has your government.
Sorry, but I'm just saying, as far as for the tech project to say that they're going to meet a net zero by 2050, I don't believe that that's there. So approving a project based on something that possibly it could meet that standard when it isn't in fact set out for scientific review seems a little bit further down.
But is it like, I guess I'm just trying to ascertain whether or not there are things that can be done to address your concerns, or if you just fundamentally believe the project should not go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'll say that I fundamentally do have concerns about approving a large-scale oil sands mine project. And I have serious concerns when I see that the main reason for supporting it, as set out in the report, is based on it seems like faulty economic assumptions. So to me, until we kind of surmount all of that, all I'm left with is what the report says about the environmental damage. And that is something that I have a hard time seeing how we can support it.
What do you say to, and I mean, no disrespect by this, but you're an MP in downtown Toronto, in a riding that I grew up in, so I get it. I also lived in Alberta for a number of years, and I can tell you that there are a lot of people there who think people in downtown Toronto don't care about the fact that tens of thousands of people have lost their jobs there, and they, because of the rhetoric that they're hearing from Ottawa, they feel like those jobs are never coming back. The kinds of concerns you're expressing, I'm not trying to take away from them, but what do you say to the idea that, you know, they're going to say, hey, there are these people in Toronto who are trying to decide our future. They just don't care about our economic plight.
And I'd say that it's not true that people don't care. In fact, when I go to meetings and I meet with people in my community, they talk a lot about a just transition and wanting to make sure that there are jobs for people across this country. So people are aware of the issues that are involved in this, and certainly—
But are they aware that that transition doesn't exist right now?
I think that it's something that we've committed to working on, and we did work on it with workers in coal-fired electricity plants. So our government has a history on working on that before. But in addition, it's something that if we're looking for that, if we're concerned about jobs, then really I would think that what we should be looking at are what are the shovel-ready projects that are going ahead. It seems like in the context of this project, it doesn't seem to have bearing that you would have people working immediately based on what I heard the tech CEO say. So to me, let's work together, and I'm absolutely happy to work with my Alberta colleagues to see how we can support one another to make sure that those jobs are created.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Ms. Dabrusin. Appreciate your time.
Great, thank you.
Julie Dabrusin, she's